succeed in what they are doing, then we don't have African businessmen. They don't have the capacity to face them. So they need to do whatever they can to sponsor these groups. The youths are able and the youths are hungry. The youths want to face these Chinese because their future is no longer secured, Mr. Leo. I think the diaspora also should wake up.
Okay, that was Tiku Felix writing filing in from Boya. You've listened to Tiku Felix. He says this is the time for us to look at the real intentions of China as far as Africa is concerned.
Yes. You know, Mr. Leo, before we talk about the Chinese, we have to go back to history and study the colonial accord that African countries signed with some of the Western powers. You know, the Western powers that came, Britain, France, and the rest, Belgium in Africa, they operated on accords. Cameroon has a 1959 accord with France that almost gave almost everything we have to them, which is very dangerous to us. China has come not with accord but with loans. We should be able to know the strategy of China in Africa, so we target it and fight it from that angle. China came to Africa, it's not operating in accords, it's operating in loans. And the loan is what China is using to penetrate Africa. And we must do everything possible to stop Africans from collecting loans from China. Because their strength is that they thrive on loans. And when those loans are taken, the African countries are caught in between the nail, the hammer, and the stone. They are caught in between. They are hooked up in this debt. Some analysis. East Africa, we have ECOWAS in the West Africa, we have the Maghreb, and all these different blocks have different banks. There is a West African bank, there is BEAC in Central Africa, and there's also BDEAC. BEAC is Banque des États de l'Afrique Centrale. The BDEAC is Banque de Développement de l'Afrique Centrale. This bank is meant for the development of Central African states. There is the African Development Bank. There's a South African Development Bank. There are banks. Most of the banks at the Maghreb are connected with the Middle East that operate under the World Bank. Now, I'm asking these sincere questions. With all these banks we have in Africa, why must we go to China to collect loans? There is the AfriZim, which is the African Import and Export Bank, that is working in accord with the BDEAC to sponsor projects within the Central African region. I want to ask that these banks are only titles or they are realities. Because if all these banks are in Africa, African Development Bank, AfriZim, which is African Import-Export Bank, we have BDEAC, we have BEAC, we have West African Bank, we have East African Community Bank, we have South African banks come together. These are all blocks that have different banks. Why are all these banks not functional? How do they operate that they cannot even give loan to their own people? You mean to tell me that all the countries in Central Africa under BDEAC, if they put their finances together, they cannot sponsor Cameroon for a project, and then later on they turn to Gabon sponsor for a project, and then go to Malabo for a project? Why must 54 African countries travel to China to go and collect a 60 billion loan? That is the first challenge. Now, the second challenge is this. Under what conditions do our African presidents and leaders sign loans with China? China comes to Africa and sign a loan that will give you opportunity to run a particular property in Africa for 99 years. The generations that sign that loan, the next generation that comes will still suffer under the casualty of that loan. The third generation, how do you sign a loan that a third generation will not be able to pay that loan? I think the issue of loans in Africa is this, is what China is doing to penetrate us. Let us get to a place whereby our different blocks with their different banking system should endeavor to make sure they invest to develop one country for 4 years. They go for the next country, another 4 years. Every country should present their project. BEAC should sponsor Central African projects. West African banks should sponsor West African projects. African Development Bank should also support African projects in Africa. How can we have all these banks, African Import-Export Bank, with all these different blocks, yet we still go to China to collect loan for 60 billion? And that is the stronghold of China in Africa. If we can render them impotent in the place of loan, China loses complete control of the continent Africa.
Okay, China loses complete control. It's China, because the issue here is how many people are asking how China succeeded in getting Africans to believe that engaging in a business with them would be different from what obtained with the West that was already in business with Africa. Why did we fail to note that the Chinese would engage in business in Africa and would not care whether there was respect for human rights or not? Nothing like that was looked out for in engaging in business with China.
Leo, there is what we call geoeconomy, and there's what we call the cultural inclination of a state. If you look at the West very well, they do business with a certain kind of caution in such a way that they look at their policies and their cultural policies that make manifest. As a business country like China first needed to study that Africa, what are the parameters that governs this nation? One, corruption. Two, high level of impunity, where you do things and go away with it. And what are the difficulties they have when they do business with the West? One, the aspect of homosexuality, which the West is struggling to implement in Africa, which they are refusing. And secondly, the aspect of trying to put check and balances for these African countries, which is a factor that the Africans don't want it. And those are the factors that hinders Africans from dealing effectively with the West. China comes in and says, okay, if I have to be a world power, or if I have to take dominance to get these resources, what do I need to do? Should I put these barriers of check and balances? It would be difficult for me to have these resources. Why not just operate under how they want to operate? The example here that you see, China has a kind of democracy that we have in Africa, a semi kind of dictatorial regime where the Communist Party determines what goes in.
Yeah, you are trying to look at the similarities between
Africa.
But the problem is today everybody is crying. Why?
Yes, we are crying. Everybody is crying. It's not everybody's crying. Everybody's crying, but not everybody's crying. Let me explain that statement. Everybody's crying. You, myself, Apostle, and the rest, the masses are crying. The government and those who borrow this money are not crying.
No, that is
no.
I don't think so.
I
don't think so, because Donald Trump, who is at the head of the number one nation.
The African nations who borrows this, the African leaders who are borrowing this money are not crying. If they are crying, they will not have been going for more borrowing.
No.
They still go in for more borrowing. Look at what is happening.
Exactly.
What happened? There's a breaking news that just happened in Nigeria today. 17 Chinese officials were arrested in Osun State for illegal mining in one forest. Do you say everybody's crying? Everybody's crying that they're borrowing this money. The leaders, as I speak to you now, they still have the opportunity to sign
but what is the proportion of the leaders vis-a-vis the nation?
The issue I was looking at, you asked a question, why do they do business more with China than the West?
My question was, why did they not detect that there was something faulty in China's coming?
When you have a hidden agenda, their cognitive reasoning doesn't apply. It's like a lady who is angry with a man. That lady doesn't look at reasoning. That lady look at emotions. Now, when you have that hidden agenda, that agenda of wanting to get more, you think it's greener over the fence, you don't reason much, you don't even look at some of these barriers that pertain. We are in this kind of conflict that we have in China-African relations. It's simply because we as a people, the people on the street, decided to, in fact, we allowed our government to take precedence over us. Look at what is happening next door in Gambia. Look at the situation of Gambia. Look at the different situation even in South Africa. As I speak to you, there is a Chinese who was coronated in Nigeria as a chief. If you look at these are things that are applicable. But how do we get here? Apostle asks a question that why is it that they leave all these banks, Bayak and Kodak and all the rest, to come and to go and get loans from China? The simple reason is accountability. Because they feel that if they go to these African banks, there will be accountability that you took this money, what did you do with it? But with China, you cannot actually unveil the amount you collected from China. They will tell you they collected this amount of money, which is an accord. So it's difficult effort to get this money from a nearest neighbor than to get from a far off stranger, which you believe that people may not easily rush. How many people will go to China to ask how much loan was collected from China? But everybody in Benin will know.
The issue is this.
Yes.
The issue is this. Let me just add to what Tom has said. The issue is this. China came with the mentality that they will work for us to give them money. The Europeans came that we give them money without them working. The 500 billion that Africans give to France per annum, they don't work anything. But China comes that he will build you a seaport and control the seaport for 99 years. So Africans weigh the balance between what the West is offering them and what China is offering them. They felt like China's own was better. But on the balance, we are getting to the detail to understand that China is not just looking for your properties. China wants to own your property to accommodate its growing population. China did not come to colonize Africa. China is coming to buy Africa. It needs land space to accommodate its growing population. So that's what we understand. If Chinese have 13 police stations in South Africa, it's serious.
I don't understand, Apostle. When you say people come to buy land, they don't come to colonize. I don't know if you understand the future plan of China in Africa. China has the largest population in the whole world. I don't know if you
he did not say they are not coming to colonize.
Listen,
it means you did not get him very well.
Listen, no, he is saying that they did not come to colonize.
No, that's not what he said.
No, he's saying that
they didn't come to colonize.
he's saying that
they came to buy
land. That's what I'm saying. You cannot say they came to buy land and they didn't come for colonization.
They did not come. Listen. They did not come to
nobody
They came to own Africa.
Okay. In a larger sense, now you're right.
Which is buying.
Which is buying. Because China has a population, the largest population in the world.
1.5 billion.
Approximately 1.5 billion.
Yes.
People in the world. And you logically want to ask yourself why a country with 1.5 billion people who want to do business with the entire Africa. You have the highest population in the world that you should be thinking of how to feed these people. You should be thinking of how to raise their standards of living, of giving them space.
And then you can't play.
And then you have so much money to call Paul Kagame of Rwanda, to call Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, to call Paul Biya of Cameroon, and many of these guys for a summit in China.
That come and collect
money and go back. Cameroon collected. We are talking about the Chan and the AFCON. Cameroon took a huge chunk of money from China to build these structures. And Cameroon put these countries, Cameroon put the system at stake. You know, at one point, I'm sure it was around 2015 or 16, when President Paul Biya tasked China to give a loan for computers for Cameroonians for about 60-something billion francs. Until date, Cameroonians have not been able to feel the impact of those laptops, Paul Biya laptops, and they'll have to pay that loan. Now you logically want to ask, why are Africans this stupid? Permit me to say, Africans, we are stupid to sit back, fold our arms, and watch a population of 1.5 billion come into Africa and seize everything where that we have, put their structures everywhere. They have their businesses running in Africa. The other day I was watching a video of a Chinese guy, of about 25 years, who is doing business in Kenya. This guy does business in Kenya and do not pay people. He does not pay workers in Kenya. When these workers raised their voices against this guy, he did a live video, calling Uhuru Kenyatta, the president of Kenya, that is a monkey. That's a monkey who will not pay them and they'll do nothing. So Kenya had to send this guy. They repatriated him back to China. Chinese have taken Africa. Now the West look at Africa to be a ground of truly like monkeys. Like we are really monkeys.
Okay, you mean the West or China?
China, the West, being Europe, America, and the other. When you say the West, sometimes
that's the West. China is in the East.
Yes, I like to globalize them. I'm talking about these foreign powers. They look at Africa like a land where they should prey on. And Africans are so stupid. Permit me say this. We are so stupid. And if we don't wake up from our stupidity, we are going to perish collectively. We have gold from Sudan right up to Tripoli, down to Pretoria, wherever. We have gold, we have diamonds, we have silver, we have minerals, we have everything that these fellows are coming here for. What we lack is the ability to do the finishing. What is stopping the thousands of Chinese guys, Cameroonians who are in China, the thousands of Nigerians who are in China, the thousands of Malayans who are in Germany, those ones who are in other parts of the West, to get these skills and come back and then make use of our resources so that we do not depend on these fellows. It beat my imagination that at this age, China was a third world country like Cameroon. What's happening to us that we keep looking at people who should even be looking for food to feed themselves, and then we keep looking for help from them. They don't have a good plan. We are talking about coronavirus that comes from China. At this moment, America and China, they are loggerheads because of the coronavirus. China, the world is succeeding today, Leo, because of technology. And if Africa, you're asking the question there, what should Africa do
to counter
this? Africa needs a revolution in their mind, in their educational setup. The African education does not suit the 21st century context of development.
Yes,
because if Africa must develop, Leo, let me just land that. If Africa must develop, what is happening in Africa, what is happening in the world is technology and science.
Okay.
Africa is still depending on the rudimentary way of doing things.
Yes, Doris.
Okay, just to point out something from what you said. You said what is happening to Africans out there that they can't acquire the knowledge and come back here and actually develop our own country. This is something serious. I witnessed a situation in the university when a worker was imported from India to come and teach anatomy and physiology. He came, he was teaching, he had a very high salary of about 800,000 francs, had a free house, free flight to and fro his country, had a car. Okay, now we were not even understanding his accent. He was pronouncing vesicle.
African stupidity.
Yes, we were not even understanding it. Anatomy was really 9 I for one. But when a fellow Cameroonian took over that course, it was so easy for everybody. Students from that university, I wouldn't like to disclose, they can't testify. But that Cameroonian was barely paid something very little.
Yeah,
advantages.
Yes, let's look at China and Cameroon.
Okay, now when we talk about China and Cameroon, it's simple to combat China. I think the speaker from Boya said my mind. It is time for the youth of this nation to rise up. The future of this nation is in shit because the future of every nation depends on the youth. Why are our youth quiet? I can quite remember when Mimi Mefa was arrested, the social media couldn't rest. People couldn't rest on social media. Combat here and there, and of course we did that for Mimi Mefa because we knew that she's a voice, she spoke. But I don't even know up to now, why is she quiet? I will use this opportunity to say, Mimi Mefa, we did that for you because we believe you are a voice. So you should also talk this time around. Okay, now I'm calling on the youth. Let's put our hands together. Let's put this thing on social media. Let's fight the way we can fight. Let's call on the attention of the government. We can't continue watching China taking over our nation. We don't have any future. What will we leave for our children? What is the legacy we are keeping for the younger generation? Remember, the younger generation is also looking up to us. I'm talking to the youth. So it is our place. We should put our heads together. We should rise up and do something.
Okay, Mr. Leo, thank God we can now enjoy the program now. The problem with us Africans is that when our brothers pass in a certain place where there is gold, he goes for it and cut the bridge off for his brother not to reach there. Chris is still writing from China. I just took the message to note that you guys can now follow us from China. We move over to the Netherlands to get Fomu Courage again share his views and thoughts as far as this countering China is concerned.
Mr. Leo, talking about countering China's invasion in Africa and what Africans should actually do. Permit me start by saying the presence of China in Africa is actually a disturbing development, if you ask my opinion. Because what was previously announced as a win-win partnership between Africa and China seems to be a shadow of itself. The Sino-Africa Cooperation is actually beneficial just to one party, and that is China. If you see, back in the 90s, when the Chinese started migrating to Africa, everybody was so pumped up because we thought finally we've got somebody we could work with to improve on our technology and on our production capacity. But what happened? China actually implemented a debt trap diplomacy, using that to recolonize Africa by lending her money, which they know they can't and may never pay back. Take a look at the figures, Mr. Liu. Africa owes China more than 145 billion euro as we speak. How do we reimburse this money? You ask, what should Africans do? How do you send away somebody you're highly indebted to? If you see the reasons why China is in Africa, then you know we are in for a long battle. You know, I managed to come out with 4 main reasons why China is in Africa. Firstly, you see, China is overpopulated. There are 2 billion people living in China. So it is normal that China goes out in quest of arable land, which can help survive its population. Where else in the world provides such luxury than Africa? Secondly, you see in the West today, the cost of production is skyrocketing every day. So the cheaper labor in Africa is a plus for China. And at the same time, Africa provides a ready market for Chinese goods. Thirdly, you know, just like every other former colonizer, China is in Africa for her resources. Reasons for the loans accorded to Africa. Loans that can never be paid back. And finally, I think China is in Africa to impose her cultural, intellectual, and educational system, just like the colonizers did back in the days. So just like every other world power, China has its interests as a priority. However, when you ask what should Africans do, I think there's only one answer to that question. Because if we start talking about creating a currency, creating companies, carrying out economic reforms, there's just one thing that has to be done. We have to carefully choose our leaders. We have to choose leaders who have their nations at heart. There is already an awareness going on in Africa that can only increase as the years go by, goes by. So to me, Africans should therefore capitalize on this positive energy that is.
Okay, that was Courage Afomo all the way from the Netherlands participating in this edition of the program. It raised an issue of the presence of China. How do we understand that China has gone further, even the Cameroon's government is deciding that Chinese language should be taught in some schools in Cameroon? It is entering. Is that not going an extra mile?
That is why I say, Mr. Liu, any development that comes from the East should be looked into with a pinch of salt. China has a population of 1.5 billion people. Initially, China spoke Mandarin, and that's the most popular language in the world because of the population. But because their language had not spread, in terms of number, they could speak Chinese. But in terms of, how do I put it, expansion, Mandarin had not expanded. So they had to first of all study English language. That's why they invited people to come and teach English, so that they could take English now and penetrate the world. They have come to Africa not just to colonize Africa. There are 3 different powers we are dealing with here. There's a European in Africa, there's American in Africa, and there's a Chinese in Africa. And if we want to deal with these issues, we have to deal with them squarely. The Europeans came to Africa for the raw materials, not the land. China has not come for the raw materials. China has come for the land. China does not have space to keep its increasing population. India is another uprising nation. You will also hear one day India is penetrating Africa. India has 1.3 billion people. Those people do not even have sufficient jobs for their people. Coming to Africa, they are not coming to help Africa. No power from Europe or the East or the West will ever come to help Africa. China came to Africa to buy off Africa. That's the reason why, if you look critically, their approach is different. You will never find any French military man in Cameroon's army. You only find a French military base in Africa that has French military people, and they operate with it and go away. But China has people who are Chinese in the army or police of a particular system of the government. They have established police stations in Africa in order to protect Chinese interests. That's the problem.
That's how it starts.
Number 3, they don't even have surface area to accommodate. They give birth in China in seasons. It is the government that says it is time to deliver. If you get pregnant where it's not time to deliver, they use the fetus for something else. That's why they eat little children. They are not eating because they like it. They eat it because they cannot continue giving birth to children. It's a season that you give birth to children. Now, if China has come to Africa, I am begging Africans to understand that China has nothing to offer Africans. Nothing. How do they do? They produce first-class products. They sell to Europe. Second class, they sell to the East, where they sell to Korea and Japan. The list of their products come to Africa. That already tells you where the African mind is in the mind of the Chinese man. We are considered as a low level of human beings, and as considered as animals, we cannot get anything better. Mr. Low, if somebody has you in his mind as an animal, take for instance how you treat your dog. Where you eat is not where your dog eats. Where you sleep is not where your dog sleeps. The privilege you give to your children. So if the Chinese man knows that the African man is an animal in his mind, he is treating us at the level of a man treating his domestic animal. We are too low in the eyes of China. To kick China out of Africa completely, I still sound it as a note of warning. Boycott Chinese loans. I said it the last time that John Pombe Magufuli came to power in Tanzania, found out that his predecessor, Jakaya Risha Kikwete, signed a deal for China to build a 10 billion seaport in Dar es Salaam. When they went, he checked it. China's condition for that loan was to rule the port for 99 years. Magufuli said they have to renegotiate that particular loan. When they renegotiated, he said it's going to last for 33 years. Hear me very well. China refused. Running a port in somebody's country for 99 years, almost my brother, is almost a century. That means about 4th generation, 4 different generations will die before China ever goes out of that place. What benefit is that kind of deal to a nation? By the time they are going out, the port must have worn out. The money you will need to renovate and restructure that port will be stronger or more expensive than the money you ever used to build the port again. Africans should know that China does not have population, does not have way to keep population. China does not have sufficient food. China does not have raw material. China is in Africa for China and nothing for Africa. The Europeans are in Africa. Their interest is that they pick a few persons in the government, get them well fed at the expense of the masses. Theirs is even better because even the African presidents are victims to Chinese loans. The American man will go to a nation because he knows that Americans will come there one day. They will construct that nation to the taste of America, knowing that their citizens may come and stay there one day. China is not even thinking of developing Africa, even though Chinese are walking to this continent. So we should be able to know, I will prefer the American man to come to Africa. If you go to Guinea Equatorial, there are Americans who have come there to work and they have remained there because they have upgraded the standard of the country to the taste where an American citizen can find comfort. So let's be able to judge in this continent, Africa, and be able to ascertain. America is working closely with Paul Kagame in the Kivu area in northeastern Congo, where they are extracting cobalt gold from the mines there. They are the ones that sponsor Kagame to push Hutu rebels to collect gold and cobalt in that place. Look at what they have done to Rwanda. They are the ones developing Rwanda. So if you see, America's interest in Africa is far more better than Europe and China. We should think twice. China is a low cost that will eat everything green in Africa and allow Africans to stand in between the devil and the deep blue sea. I read my case.
Okay, now you raised the issue of leaders in Africa who, according to you, are also victims, but seemingly they do it with impunity. How do we get the civil society and the population to check some of the content of these engagements undertaken on behalf of the people by African leaders?
Leo, I want to say that the first begins with education. The first part is that the civil society themselves need to get the mastery of this China African relation.
Yes.
Second, they have to get now to see what ways in which they can do that to educate the local population, to create that awareness so that the people can stand and now actually fight for what belongs to them. And if we don't take these two approach, I think we will be lacking. And thirdly, which is an approach that the civil society can take, it begins with the political will, and it begins with the leader you select in a nation. Now, with the civil society giving education to the local masses as of Chinese-African relations, the danger it poses to their future, it gives that ability for the local man to understand, okay, if elections are coming, let's say in the next 5 years, presidential election, my question I will ask the leader, the candidate, how will you deal with Cameroon's China relation? That is what I put as my card if I have to vote for you. Now you start at that level. You start creating that becomes now the center of presidential debate. That becomes the center of municipal of legislative debate, because if parliamentarians are to go into the parliament, what are the laws that they are going to?
But you start telling us what policies they are going to implement as
far as China African relationship is concerned. That should be the pace setter. That's how we set the ball rolling. And in that regard, now the next phase is that the civil society needs to form what we call the coalition against China, coalition against invasion. For example, my dear sister here mentioned about the aspect of social media. Social media has a great role to play. Let's say we have 100 people every day, every Saturday, live on Facebook, talking about the danger of China-African relations. 100 youth active every day. It picks the steam in Cameroon, Nigeria picks the steam, South Africa picks the steam. That's how the awareness start going. The leaders now for election now start trembling that, hey, these guys are now aware, and they know that if we do this, if we do that, we may not be elected. Remember that, if you don't create this awareness, you don't create this task force that start generating, you are missing the things. You are missing to hold the facts on where it pinches most. If you just decide that, okay, we are just going to talk, yeah, it's going to create some awareness, but the push factor of that awareness can only come if we have that political will. They start holding our parliamentarians to task, because the parliamentarians make laws that those laws affect the nation. China don't just sign the deal with the president. China, that president send a bill to the parliament. The parliament look at those things and
that is a question I had for Doris, because you are talking about civil society and the population, educating them, but these people have voted MPs to go to the parliament and represent them, and they have representatives at different levels. They have senators and the rest. Are they not the ones to pressure government to fact check what government is doing as far as China is concerned?
Exactly, they are responsible for that. That my brother earlier mentioned creating the awareness. The truth is, people don't even know that's the damages China intends to cause in Africa. So, like my brother earlier said, the thing is, we need to mount this pressure on our parliamentarians. They are the ones to carry our problems to the parliament, because, like we rightly said, they're the ones approving the bills. The president does not just go and sign anything just like that, no. So we need to create the awareness by putting pressure on them. I will repeat, let the youth, they shake their head up. Chest out, youths. We are living in a generation that people are just timid, mute, I'm afraid. Come on. No, you are not a mistake. God didn't create you in this generation for nothing. God knew that there was something that you were coming to offer, so it is time for you to offer it. So I think we should look at our parliamentarians, we hold them accountable for this. Yes, we should mount some pressure on them, like he has rightly said. Yeah, we should start creating an awareness. We do the thing on social media. Youth, they go live, they talk about this. Let's do more research on this. In fact, I'm privileged to have my daddy here, Apostle, because he's really pouring the thing in me, and the thing is really coming in me. In fact,
okay, the youth should talk, and the civil society should hold their MPs accountable, and their leaders to tell them, render account as far as the Sino-Africa relationship is concerned. Now, China is not only in Africa; they have acquired very, very large expanse of land across Africa. Is this also a wake-up call to question those who are in charge of lands in Africa, in Cameroon, to be precise, to question how China came about acquiring these lands?
You, the world is ruled by some very few individuals. And for those who understand the logic, the world order, they'll accept with me that very few guys call the shots as far as the world is concerned. And China has worked so hard thanks to its population, it happens to be one. If you must make a decision in this world, you must be among the grandmasters. And China is among the grandmasters. If you must be one of the people who pull the trigger around any issues in the world, you must be one of those who hold the economy of the earth. China has the economy of this world. China has worked so hard to have the economy in its grip and is using it to its advantage. There's nobody, no economy, no nation in the world that will go into a business deal or trade deal.
Yeah, that is known by everybody. But my question now is, they are in Africa. They are Chinese who have come here and have acquired land and are engaged in farming. These lands have been purchased by the Chinese. My question now is, yes, is this time to get our authorities to tell Cameroonians what policies the Chinese use to acquire these lands?
Of course it is, but that's why I was bringing to you the background of why they have. And if you don't know the background,
America,
a different national policy. People have their different interests when they engage, especially on Africa. There are people who just come to pick the raw materials and invest somewhere else. There are people who come to stay. China wants to settle its population as well. So China's case is different. And China is choosing economy, the economic advantage that it has to prey on Africa. What I'm holding, this is the face mask. This is my face mask, right? I bought this here for 500 francs. This is 500 francs. Made here in fact, it's made in Bamenda. I bought in Bamenda yesterday. Now, Chinese have their face masks around here for 200 francs. That is business, that's economy. And when they flood our markets with it, economically they say it's dumping.
Yeah, but
we buy it cheaper.
It's for policies.
Listen, this is where I'm coming from. When we make a market, our policies, because everyone who has your money has the right to decide.
Yeah, but my question is, that is what now my question, organizations like Serge Espoir Matomba is doing.
These guys are helpless. Leo, this is where I'm coming to. These guys are helpless. I've told you earlier, the guys who call the shots. In fact, the economy of Cameroon is not done by those fellows you see in the parliament. They can't do anything.
No. Fraudulent people not investigate how Chinese acquired land.
What are the policies?
The investigations have been going on.
Yeah, but
everywhere in Africa.
But pressure should be mounted. Are you saying that
it's not about knowing? It's not about knowing if China has this portion of land. It's about you coming out concretely as a regime, as a government, as Africa as a whole, to put a stop to this. But Africa lacks that capacity. What I'm saying is, what I'm struggling to point out, you're not getting it, is that Africa as a whole is lagging because they don't have the manpower to stop these world economic giants from preying on them. Now, we have a case. Let's take a case in Cameroon.
No, when you say Africa does not have, we have a president in Tanzania. We have a president in Tanzania who came and said,
I can't say loan.
This loan.
On how many cases?
No,
but saying that Africa, the major tribes lacks that collaborative tendency. Economy two ways we can. So Africa lacks unity. Africa lacks law. Unfortunately, if listening to
who is it?
it is that
Kagame is doing a great. I've seen the decision that having a
to work. Tanzania alone confronted this is rubbish in Africa. I will explain it to you. Materials were, labor was cheap. Started American investors in China, Baku, let me learn. That if they could attempt that nonsense to all my it is also trying, it can equally raise a standard and silence China. From China to America, they took their companies back to China and produce at home. That was a reason for let the world authorities and cheap that the Chinese Americans were the ones making attempted that. The way you, whether you are young or you are old, hates China is a nation. How can they kick out Chinese economy? How strong is Tanzania? Intimidated. No one over parties.
yeah.
Africans and to accommodate it, we have one. That's many years ago. Years, as long as it delivered 3 billion. Where surface of area, the ones who determine who works at the seaport. Five Chinese percent blacks.
And low capital and low.
Africa.
you in with there was a question. We are seemingly missing things to be looking at the power that no, we don't have that power.
Why don't we have?
There's a as an island, Africa is
and look at what just happened again in Tanzania. Fully yesterday, that test kit that how did he do that? Nobody to samples of goats, named it to individuals and assigned this to them, and in Tanzania. The laboratory he wants to use the beings. Now, when those it shows that fruit, and of course, tasted. All aid that we take for develop us, some are meant to destroy our economy.
Loan from China must be.
Let me come. Where do we go from here? Get the local